Now, as we can see here, this is an alternative sentencing program. So the courts will often send people to this program as an alternative to going to jail. And the advantage of that is that they can do the program from within their own communities, because we go out to the communities. Then they can practice the skills that they've learnt in the program immediately, rather than spending time in jail and doing a program there and perhaps months or years later practicing those skills. We talk about the effects of family violence on the offender, the victim, the family and the rest of the community. We say that family violence is not acceptable, it's against the law. We challenge the beliefs, attitudes and behaviours that do promote violence. And it's now the violence is not in a supportive environment. I was practising this last night and it looked as if I was going to say we look at violence in a supportive environment where we talk about the violence that people have perpetrated, and the group that we run is supportive. So normally by the second day or so we find that there's quite a good level of trust there, so people are happy to generally to open up. The aim is to get people to take responsibility for their offending, not blame the victim, which is often the case. You'll often hear somebody say, "Oh, she put me in here." I used to hear that when I was working in the jail as well, and people would say, or a woman once said to me, "I don't know why she put me in here. She knows I've got 2 little kids to look after." So it's helping people recognise that their behaviour is what put them in there rather than the person putting them in there. And we practice strategies. So we do lots of role plays, and as they learn these strategies, we encourage them to do the role plays in language and then in English. And often the group discussions will be held in language first, because a lot of people don't have, as you're probably aware, don't have English as their first language. So we encourage it. We don't know what they're talking about, but we encourage them to talk about it in language, and then if they're happy to do so, then in English. Desmond found this on the internet somewhere, I think. This is about assessment, and it comes from the word, I don't know how to say it, assidere or something, which means sitting beside. And it's all about finding out information about the people who are going to be doing a particular program. So these things that we need to know are things like their childhood history, where they were born, information about their relationships with their parents, families, whether in their background they experienced domestic violence, fighting or drinking, what level of education they got to, what their literacy level is like, whether they've had alcohol and other drug issues, their current relationship status, whether they have children, medical, psychological, cognitive conditions. And it's really important for me as a psychologist to know all this information before going into a group and running it. And previously that wasn't done very much, so we used to spend quite a bit of time having one-on-one sessions with them, finding out this information. But we're hoping the PPOs, probation officers, will be able to find out some of this information for us. So that's going to be something fairly new that will be happening soon. Now this is from the previous program, which was called the Indigenous Family Violence Offending Program. And you can see it's about breaking the cycle of family violence. The first one on the left is the cycle of committing an offence, going to court, going to jail, going to community corrections, going back to family, and then the whole thing starting all over again. So the aim of the program is to help them with an alternative pathway which doesn't involve going around and round in that circle of violence, so that they come to a program and learn what is family violence, who does it hurt, what makes me violent, how can I behave in a better way, and who can help, and then moving forward. So the new program that I've been developing, that's part of my role. I was brought on board to rewrite the family violence program, and to train and supervise the facilitators. And we've got, as I said, 6 facilitators at the moment. It's a shorter program. The original one was 8 to 10 days. The one we're doing now, and I've only just started delivering it, is 5 days. And it's very process-focused rather than content-focused. The original program had 16 different subjects or topics, and I think it was too much information for people to absorb over that period of time. So we're focusing a lot more on background information, things that led up to the offending, looking at what they're going to learn and do in the program and developing an action plan that they can realistically put into practice at the end of it. We invite guest speakers, and we invited a guest speaker recently. He was a young man called Jamie. He had been a previous graduate of another program. This was at Nhulunbuy. And he was invited in and spoke to the men in the program about how he had found the program very successful for him, and he was very proud, very happy to come and talk to them. And at the end of the program, a lot of the men in the program were saying, I want to be just like Jamie when I've finished this. And we found too that a lot of people, when we ask them, have you ever heard anything like this before? A lot of people say no. They're sort of taken for granted that if they feel angry, no one, well, it appears often people don't challenge their behaviour, that if you feel angry, there are other ways of dealing with anger apart from lashing out at somebody or something. So a lot of them have even said things like, I don't know if it's found to be true with the evidence, but people have said things at the end of the program, I reckon this program's going to change my life, but we're not really sure about that. I'll show you some statistics that we've got later, but we are still in the process of researching the success of this program. Anyone want to ask me a question at all? I'm getting a very dry throat, so I need to have a drink of water. Okay, from the research, people learn a lot more rather than somebody standing up in front of you like I am. If we get people actually interacting and practicing things, it's much better and they're more likely to remember it than if they just hear it talked about. With the other program, we'd often have 10 or 12 men, and in every group of people you usually get 3 or 4 who are quite outspoken and quite confident. You get 2 or 3 sometimes who hardly say anything, and then you get the ones in the middle. So often we didn't know, even towards the end of the program, very much about these people and very much about whether they were understanding it or not. So with the way we're running this one, right from day one, we have people starting off with introducing themselves using maps. So we have a map of the world, a map of the Aboriginal map of Australia, and a map of the Northern Territory. So we start off with people going out to the maps. So this is encouraging movement right from the start. Going out to the maps and saying, this is my country, this is where my mother's family came from, my father's family came from, grandparents, getting them to say what they like about their community and also what they hope to get out of the program. And the reason we have the map of the world too is because a lot of people, Aboriginal people, often have backgrounds that are non-Indigenous, and certainly I'm non-Indigenous, so it's, I suppose, just to make us all feel that we're all human beings and we're all the same. We all have different backgrounds, we all come from different places, but we all have our own cultures. So, and the other thing that we do quite a lot about is help people build on their self-esteem. So again, right from the very beginning, we're encouraging people to talk about what they're proud of, what they're happy about with themselves, plans for the future, because again, the research has found that if people have higher self-esteem, they're less likely to reoffend. So part of the action plan too is exploring whether they would like to do further training or to get a job. So we, as part of their action plan, we look into that as well. We get guest speakers in. Now the guest speakers come in and not only provide information about a particular topic, for example, alcohol and other drugs, but also they come in so that our participants can remember their faces. We write down, or get them to write down the names of the services and the names of the people. We ran a program here in Alice Springs a couple of weeks ago, and we had Safe and Sober come in, and Deborah Maidment was the AOD worker, and we only had 4 women in the group, but I think 3 already have contacted Congress to get some help. So that's sort of another difference, that we have a very strong, realistic follow-up plan, because people are more likely to be successful if they have a follow-up plan rather than us just coming in and doing a 5-day or an 8-day or a 10-day program and then going away again. The other reason why it's shorter is so that facilitators can go back to the communities more frequently, because the way it was when it was long, people would go back once a year or something like that, but hopefully we'll be going back more frequently. And that's me in a different dress. That's why I had to buy a new dress, so that I wouldn't wear the same one again. Thank you. So they're the different topics we do. The first 2 are on day 1, the introduction, group rules, expectations of participants and facilitators. Topic 2, that's in the afternoon of the first day, and that's looking at values and attitudes people might have brought with them from their own childhood experiences. As I was saying, perhaps if they've witnessed or experienced domestic and family violence themselves. Day 2 is topic 3 and topic 4. So it's looking at the effects on themselves, the effects on the victims, and the effects on the whole community. We focus particularly on the effects on children, because a lot of research has shown that it's not just fear children develop through witnessing and experiencing domestic and family violence. It actually changes the structure of the brain, so that children, the part of the brain that is needed to acquire new learning is actually smaller in a child who's been heavily traumatised than a child who's had a more stable sort of upbringing. So we talk quite a lot about that. And you'll find that most people are very concerned and will often say that's one of their major values, to be able to help children grow up in a good way and have happy lives. So we talk too about the generational cycle of violence and how to break that, because kids are usually likely to do and think what their parents do is normal. So we try to help participants look at how they would like the lives of their sons and their daughters when they grow up. Now, the immediate factors preceding violence, that could be helping them identify situations, feelings and thinking that occur just before the violence. So looking at the pathway towards the violence, helping them step through that and working out what were those background factors. Was I in a bad mood? Did I have a hangover? Did somebody at work make me cross? Were there things that I should have talked about with my wife beforehand and I didn't? Helping them recognise some of those things, and then coming up with alternatives to violence. And some of those alternatives are very simple things like walk away, step back, lower your voice, say you'll talk about it later, examine your thinking. Perhaps often we jump to conclusions about what somebody else has said and what it means. Then topic 5, that's an all-day topic, and that's understanding anger and jealousy and also communication skills. So looking at some of the underlying emotions behind anger and jealousy, which are often insecurity, fear, other things apart from the current situation that might be making them angry, and communication skills. We do role plays on people expressing how they feel. So, of course, good communication is what you're saying, but it's also listening skills. So we do a lot of role plays in the afternoon on that day about communication skills. And then topic 6 is on the 4th day, and we have the whole day on violence and substance abuse. So it's all about the effects of substance abuse on the brain. We do various exercises, including, I don't know if anyone's seen the goggles exercise. There's an exercise, and I did it the other day, and it's pretty scary. You put on these glasses that replicate what it's like to be drunk in terms of your coordination, balance, and they put out a row of chairs, and you sort of have to wind your way through the chairs, and it's quite frightening, but it just shows people how impaired their physical judgment is, but from there we then go on and say about the effect on the brain and how well, what I often say is if you look at humans, we all have this big forehead up here. How many animals, how many rabbits, kangaroos, cats, dogs have this big front part here, which is the frontal lobes? That's the part of our brain that helps us make decisions, and that is what makes us different from the animals. So what I say to people is, if you drink a lot, that part of your brain goes numb, so you just become like, a kangaroo. And someone pointed out in the group a couple of weeks ago, yeah, kangaroos never learn that if you jump on a road you get hit by a car. And I said, yeah, well, that's right, So we do have this part of our brain that we can use to learn things and to make good decisions. Now this one here, maybe I'll sit down for this one. Can you hear me? Now this picture here is what happens, what we do, most people do in anger management programs. You get the group to draw on butcher's paper the figure of a man or a woman. Now this was done in the Women's Alice Springs program 2 weeks ago. So the 4 ladies there, all together they drew this picture of the angry woman. So the questions we ask them are things like, it's good to know what your early warning signs are with anger, because then you can stop and do something before it gets out of control. So, I'd say things like, so where does the anger start? And some would say, it starts in the brain. Okay, where does it travel to? And they say, when they've got lines there, it travels down to the hands, so that the hands feel like they've got boxing gloves on them, so you want to fight, makes the legs all shaky, gives you a pain in the stomach, makes there's steam coming out of the stomach, the heart beats really fast. And so you talk about, what colour and the movement of the anger. So one by one they'll get up and draw something on this, and you can see she's holding VB and Jim B, one in each hand. So that helps people identify anger, because often if people haven't gone to something like this, they just feel angry and do something, but it's all slowing the process down. So if they recognise the heart going fast or the face getting red, they think, I'm getting angry now. So we did a little bit of relaxation too in that last program. Anyway, the next picture, this wasn't part of the program, but when we were talking about action plans, the ladies themselves said, well, we did angry woman, why don't we do future woman? And I said, yeah, okay, that's really good. So again, they got the butcher's paper, and the 4 of them just started drawing future woman. And they didn't like angry woman, they put angry woman under the table. I had to tell them later on that angry woman really hasn't gone away completely. Maybe angry woman's shrunk a little bit, but she is still there, so be careful. So the things they put on future woman was, she's a storyteller, she looks after herself, she's kind, she's in training, she looks after her kids, she goes to church, she listens to people, she goes to work, she loves her family. And they wrote things like love, care and happiness around that. And that was really important. We hung that on the wall, and it was only a 5-day program, but they would often make reference. That was on about day 4, I think, that they came up with that. So it was good that we went with what they wanted to do. So the program is not completely structured so that we have to cover specific topics always at specific times. We try to go with the flow to a degree with the program. Now, some of the resources we use, I've tried to choose DVDs and other resources that are relevant to Aboriginal people. A lot of these resources have been done specifically for Aboriginal people. This Children See, Children Do, the one down the bottom there, that's a really short video. I think it goes for about a minute, and there are 15 little vignettes in that showing children copying parents. So it's things like a mother's going up an escalator smoking a cigarette, little girl's behind her smoking a cigarette. They get off at the top, the mother stubs it out, the daughter stubs it out. There's a woman driving a car and gives another driver the rude finger, and a little kid does the same thing. Then there's another one where there's an asylum seeker, and there's a dad saying, "Go back where you came from," the little kid's saying the same thing. Finishes off with just about a 3-second vignette of a mother and father fighting, the father raising his fist, and then the little boy raising his fist to his mother as well. And whenever I've shown that to anyone, it really evokes a lot of emotion, and it really hits home, even though it's very short. And often we'll play it twice because it's so quick. It's very confusing to work out exactly how many vignettes there are, and we've worked out there are 15 or so. I've also got some cards, these ones up here from the West Australian Government Health Department, and they're used for the Alcohol Day. And instead of just getting people to talk about alcohol problems, we might either hand out the cards face down and they pick up a card and tell us a story about that, or they can actually, we give them a task like choose some cards that show how life is with alcohol and choose some other cards to show how life is without alcohol. So again, just raising their awareness about these things. The toolbox analogies, what I've already mentioned, that I think that as the days go on, we get ideas from people and we have a picture of a toolbox in the room. And whenever people come up with strategies for dealing with anger and jealousy apart from violence, we write it all up so that by the end of the session or by the end of the program, they've got a whole long list of things that they've chosen would be good alternatives to violence, and they each fill out or get help from us to fill out their action plan. So as well as their action plan includes a support person, some strategies to deal with these these emotions, some places they can go if they want further counselling or if they want training or work, and it's something they take home with them. So these are some of the offences, some of the main offences. Just a little bit about the women. This program was developed for men. I did do it with women a couple of weeks ago in Alice Springs, and I knew even before doing it that some of the issues would be different. And from my reading, some of the differences are women, of course, are often victims as well as perpetrators, family violence. Apparently, with women, female perpetrators, there's a higher incidence of mental illness. And since Aboriginal women have increased in numbers going to prisons more than any other group in the last few years, I think it's very important for us to focus on the women. The program used to have men and women in the same group, but that's been changed because we got feedback from the women saying they felt shy, they didn't really want to talk when they had men in the room with them. So that's a particular interest of mine, and I've been doing the research and also consulting with Aboriginal colleagues, and shortly consulting a lot more with Aboriginal elders and community members. these are the regions that we go to. So we have Central region, which is around here, and Hermannsburg, Papunya, Uendamu, Docker River, Alice Springs, Catherine, those various communities there, Beswick, Barunga, Kalkarinji, Lajamanu, Nooka, Borroloola, Pine Creek, etc. Barkly region is Tennant Creek and the Barkly Work Camp, Tea Tree, Alikarung and Top End. And Gunbalanya, I've been there already. I went there, I don't know, about 6 months ago. I'm going back next week, so I'm getting back to Darwin on Sunday after this and then leaving on Monday in a four-wheel drive with somebody who can drive a four-wheel drive across the East Alligator River, which I certainly can't do. I've got some photos there if anyone wants to have a look at them later, but it's certainly on YouTube. If you type in Kail's Crossing, K-A-H-I-L-L-S, you'll see crocodiles, trucks, cars and people fishing in that river. So that's where we have to cross. And we have to cross at low tide. And low tide is 11:40 in the morning and high tide is about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then low tide, if we miss the morning one, the next low tide to get across to Gunbalanya is 11:40 that night. So we're hoping to make the morning one and run the program for the rest of the week. Each place we go to, and we're going to do this increasingly, we try to have make connections with local people. So as I said, guest speakers, people who've previously done the program, and community members and Aboriginal elders. And we take internal and external referrals. The internal referrals are usually people who are mandated to attend, so that can be from community corrections, probation and parole officers, the parole board, the courts, the police. Sometimes people are required to do this program by the Department of Family and Children's Services because they may have had their children removed or that could be about to happen. External referrals can be from other government organisations or non-government organisations, and community referrals. So these people will be non-mandated. And this is a picture that was done several years ago by one of our early participants. This is the referral process. So people will request a referral package for somebody. Within that referral package, there'll be this reasonably brief assessment that we're hoping probation officers will feel okay about conducting. Some people are not too happy about that, Louise. It just gives us a lot more information, so we don't just have blank faces in front of us. We know their background. We can gear the program more to their needs. So then we make a decision. So that'll be Desmond or I who will make the decision about taking the person in. And then we have a waiting list, and then we develop a schedule for the next few months or year based on the number of referrals. So at the moment we've got about, I think, 14 women who are on the waiting list for a program in Catherine. So I'm going to be doing that along with Mugi Patu on the 18th of November. And as I was saying, there's really not a lot of research being conducted, but that's happening all the time. These are some figures that we were able to get put together. From October 2012 till September 2013, there were 250 people referred, 205 commenced, 166 of those completed, and 16, which is about 10% of those reoffended in domestic or family violence. So it's a bit unclear what other factors were occurring there, and we don't have a matched sample, so we can't really compare, but that's looking positive, and we're going to be doing ongoing research. Where to from here? We want to encourage community ownership of the program, so that we want to develop This will involve elders, community members and other agencies participating in the program within their respective regions as guest speakers, organising, helping to get people to the program and providing input into the program content. So we're hoping that even though the structure will be basically similar, the number of topics, the flavour of each program will be different depending on the community that we go to after we've been getting a lot of input from local people. We're hoping that other organisations will develop perhaps educational resources, maybe for schools. I think you really need a program for victims as well as the perpetrators. If we're helping perpetrators recognise other ways of talking, other ways of dealing with problems, but then their victims don't have access to that information, it may not work. So really you need to have a parallel victim program, but our department won't be doing that, but we'll be hoping that local organisations can do that. Build on non-government partnerships to increase the external community referrals. And liaise with any existing victim support agencies. So I've got a lady next week coming from the local women's shelter at Gunbalanya, and she's going to come in and talk to the men about not just the effects of their violence on their victims, but also the effects on themselves. And do they really want their wives and their children to be frightened of them, things like that. But anyway, developing relationships with victim support agencies, and I've thought too possibly encouraging the establishment of family counselling or mediation services in the future. So that's it. Any questions?